My brother Nolan stole $150,000 using my credit, moved into my house, and convinced our parents I was the villain. At his arraignment, my father stood under oath and said I had willingly signed everything over. My mother sat behind him, crying on cue, while Nolan watched me like he had already won. Then the judge lifted one page from the evidence file and asked my father one question. He gasped. His fingers locked around the podium. Color drained from his face. But the question was not about the money. It was about where I had been when my signature appeared. I'm Layla Carter, 35 years old, and I work in commercial real estate escrow. My job is simple to explain and hard to do. I protect money, verify ownership, and make sure nobody walks away with something that does not belong to them. I built my life around details. Every night, I set my earrings in the same ceramic dish, tied my dark hair back, and checked my accounts before bed. I wore clean lines, neutral colors, and the kind of calm expression people mistake for confidence. The truth was, control had always been how I survived. 6 months before everything fell apart, I bought a small 2-bedroom bungalow in Grand Rapids. The siding was faded. The kitchen smelled like old grease. One bedroom had water stains spreading across the ceiling like a map. I loved it immediately. I spent weekends sanding cabinets, pulling up ruined carpet, and painting until my shoulders ached. That house was not glamorous. It was proof that I could build safety with my own hands before a work trip to Chicago. I gave my parents one spare key, only for emergencies. I told them. My father, Michael, slipped it onto his keyring. You worry too much. My mother, Susan, smiled and touched my cheek. That is why you are the responsible one. In our family, responsible never meant respected. It meant useful. Michael owned a small hardware store. Susan worked as a school counselor. Together, they looked like the kind of parents people trusted at church dinners and high school fundraisers. Then there was my younger brother, Nolan. Nolan called himself a luxury car broker. Mostly, he posted photos beside cars he did not own and talked about deals that never seemed to close. Whenever he failed, my parents blamed the market, a client, bad timing, never Nolan. At Thanksgiving, Mom once bought a grocery store cake with both our names on it. Nolan's name was written in thick blue icing across the center. Mine was squeezed near the edge, half hidden under a plastic turkey decoration. Nobody noticed. I did. I paid my own college tuition, worked late shifts, and learned not to ask for help. Nolan received cash, cars, second chances. Still, I kept coming back. Part of me believed that if I became successful enough, calm enough, generous enough, they would finally see me. That belief lasted until a rainy Tuesday in late October, when I drove back from Chicago and saw Nolan's silver car parked across the lawn of my bungalow, as if the property had always belonged to him. The first thing I noticed was the keypad. The brass deadbolt I had installed myself was gone. In its place, a black electronic lock blinked beneath the porch light. Then my phone buzzed. A payment was overdue. Not $20, not $200. The balance showed $150,000. For a second, I just stood there in the rain, staring at the number while cold water ran down the back of my coat. I thought it had to be a mistake. Then I looked through the front window. My empty living room was full. A white leather sectional covered half the floor. A television hung on the wall I had spent 3 weekends repairing. Shopping bags, champagne bottles, and takeout containers crowded the coffee table. I pounded on the door. Nolan opened it wearing silk pajama pants and an expensive watch. He looked annoyed. Layla, you're back early. I pushed past him. On the kitchen counter sat a stack of bills and payment notices, all addressed to me. I opened one, then another. Credit lines, personal loans, luxury purchases. Every page carried my name. Nolan leaned against the doorway like this was embarrassing for him. You used my identity. He sighed. I borrowed your credit. There's a difference. There is no difference. I was going to pay it back after my next deal. With what deal? His jaw tightened. You always do this. You act like you're better than everyone because you have a real job. Then I asked the question I should have asked first. How did you get into my house? He gave me a small smile. Mom and Dad gave me the key. That answer should have prepared me for what came next. It did not. I drove straight to my parents' house. The living room smelled like pot roast and cinnamon candles. My father was watching football. My mother was folding laundry. I dropped the bills on the coffee table. Nolan stole $150,000 using my credit. He is living in my house. Tell me you did not give him my key. Susan's eyes filled instantly. He is struggling. Layla. Michael muted the television. He needed a place to stay. He committed fraud. He made a mistake. Susan reached for my hand. I pulled away. Forgive him, she whispered. He's family. I looked at both of them and realized they were not shocked. They had already chosen a side. Michael stood. If you go to the police, do not expect to come back here. I waited for Susan to stop him. She did not. That night, I opened the property records for my bungalow. Nolan's name was there, and below it was a signature that looked almost exactly like mine. I stared at the signature until the letters stopped looking like my name. The loops were close. The slant was close. But whoever copied it had missed the sharp pull I always made at the end of my last name. The transfer had been recorded 3 days earlier. 3 days earlier. I had been in Chicago. My hands went cold. The apartment vent hummed above me. Rain tapped the window. A mug of coffee sat beside my laptop, untouched, until the surface turned gray and still. I wanted to call my mother. I wanted to demand an explanation. I wanted one of them to say this had gone too far. Instead, I called Claire Bennett. Claire was a real estate attorney and the closest thing I had to a mentor. She had silver at her temples, a steady voice, and no patience for people who hid cruelty behind polite language. She read the records in silence. Then she looked at me. This is not a family disagreement. Layla, I swallowed. I know. No. I need you to hear it. Someone forged your signature, transferred your property, and used your identity to create massive debt. From this moment forward, you stop arguing with them. You preserve everything. That sentence changed the temperature in the room. We froze my credit. We notified the lenders. We challenged the transfer so Nolan could not sell the bungalow or borrow against it. I saved every bill, every payment notice, every text. Then I found the message that broke whatever was left of me. Months earlier, Susan had sent Nolan copies of my identity documents. Her note was casual. These should be enough. Do not drag me into the details. I read it twice, then a third time. Claire placed one hand over mine. Do not respond. The next morning, we visited Linda Parker, the widow who lived across from the bungalow. Her porch smelled like wet leaves and peppermint tea. She listened quietly, then pulled up footage from her doorbell camera. There they were, Nolan, Michael, Susan, and a woman carrying a notary bag. They entered my house together on the same afternoon the transfer was signed. I was visible on a work call in Chicago at that exact time. My hotel records matched, my office access matched, even the parking receipt matched, for the first time. The truth felt heavier than the betrayal. I still sat outside the police station for 11 minutes before going in, because filing a report meant accepting that my parents might never forgive me. Then I understood something. They had already decided I was disposable. I filed a police report, handed over the timeline, and documented every fraudulent account. That night, I sent one message to the family group chat. I need time. Do not contact me. They mistook my silence for surrender. They had no idea I had preserved every minute of the lie they planned to tell in court. Nolan was arrested the following Thursday morning. There were no sirens or shattered windows. 2 investigators and several officers arrived with a warrant just after sunrise. I watched from across the street as Nolan opened the door in sweatpants, then froze when Daniel showed him the paperwork. They searched the bungalow carefully. Phones, laptops, credit cards, bills, a watch in its velvet box. Nolan kept asking for our father. My dad will clear this up, he said as they led him outside, even in handcuffs. He believed consequences were temporary because Michael would make them disappear. At the arraignment, my parents arrived before I did. Michael wore his best gray suit. Susan wore navy and held a folded tissue in both hands. They sat directly behind Nolan, close enough for him to turn whenever fear crossed his face. They never looked at me. At his arraignment, my parents showed up ready to testify against me. That was when I understood they were not there to save Nolan from a mistake. They were there to make me the villain. Nolan's attorney called the case a family misunderstanding. He argued that Nolan believed he had permission to use my credit and live in the bungalow. Then he asked for a lower bond and requested that Michael give a short statement. The judge allowed it. Michael walked to the podium with the confidence of a man who had never been forced to explain himself. He swore to tell the truth. Layla gave Nolan permission. He said, "She signed the house over willingly. She only changed her story after they argued." Susan nodded behind him. My chest tightened, but Claire leaned closer. "Let him finish." The prosecutor, James Miller, stood. "Mr. Carter, you personally saw your daughter sign the transfer?" "Yes." "In Grand Rapids, yes." "At the bungalow, yes. What time?" "Around 4. And you are certain it was Layla?" Michael's voice hardened. "I know my own daughter." That was the final lock clicking into place. James lifted a thin stack of records. My work records showed I entered the Chicago office before 8 that morning and left after 6. My access badge had been used throughout the day. Then came the hotel records, the parking receipt. A video call attended by 7 co-workers showed me in Chicago less than 30 minutes before Michael claimed I had signed the transfer in Grand Rapids. Michael shifted. I may have the time wrong. James played Linda's doorbell footage. The courtroom screen showed Nolan approaching my bungalow. Michael followed. Susan walked beside him. Emily, the notary, carried a leather bag. The timestamp matched the transfer. I was nowhere in the video. Susan stopped nodding. Nolan turned in his chair. For the first time, he looked afraid. James submitted the signature analysis. The signature on the transfer does not match Layla Carter's verified signatures. Michael's face reddened. "I do not know anything about handwriting experts." Judge Robert Hayes leaned forward. The room went still. He did not raise his voice. "Mr. Carter, which statement is false, your sworn claim that Layla signed this deed in front of you, or the time-stamped records proving she was in Chicago?" My father gasped. His fingers locked around the podium. The color drained from his face. Susan made a small sound behind him. Michael looked toward Nolan's attorney. The attorney lowered his eyes. There was no answer that could save him. If Michael defended the story, he had to explain how I had been in 2 cities at once. If he admitted it was false, he had lied under oath to protect fraud. The judge ordered the testimony preserved and ruled that Nolan's case would continue. The bond request was denied because the court believed he could keep manipulating accounts or property records if released. Then the judge directed the prosecutor to review Michael's testimony and the evidence involving Susan and Emily. Nolan stared at our parents as an officer moved toward him. His safety net had not caught him. It had torn open beneath all 3 of them. I did not smile. I looked at Michael and realized the man who had controlled me for 35 years had finally been defeated by the one thing he could not bully: the truth. If you want to see how the consequences reached every member of my family, subscribe now and stay with me for what happened next. Susan caught me before I reached the elevator. Her heels struck the courthouse floor in quick, uneven clicks. By the time she reached me, her mascara had blurred beneath both eyes. "Layla, please." I stopped, but I did not turn toward her right away. She grabbed my sleeve. "You have to fix this. Tell them your father was confused. Tell them Nolan thought you agreed. We are still your family." I looked down at her hand. For years, that word had worked like a lock. Family meant I should pay. Family meant I should stay quiet. Family meant Nolan's needs came first, and my pain had to wait. I gently removed her fingers from my coat. Family does not ask an innocent person to lie so guilty people can feel safe. Her mouth trembled. "You are going to ruin us." "No," I said. "I am done standing between you and what you chose." Claire stepped beside me, and we walked into the elevator while Susan remained in the hallway. That was the last private conversation I had with either of my parents. Everything after that happened through attorneys, investigators, and court notices. The legal process took months. Nolan eventually accepted a plea agreement. The evidence was too complete, and his own messages made it clear he knew I had never given permission. He received several years in prison, financial supervision after release, and an order to repay what could be recovered. Michael and Susan were investigated separately. Michael's testimony became part of the case against him. The video placed him at the bungalow. His messages showed that he knew I was in Chicago. He had not misunderstood anything. Susan tried to claim she only wanted to help Nolan get back on his feet. Then investigators showed her the message where she sent him my identity documents and told him not to involve her in the details. Emily lost her authority to notarize documents and faced her own legal penalties. My parents avoided the same sentence Nolan received, but they did not escape. They were placed under strict supervision, ordered to pay restitution and fines, and required to follow no-contact conditions. Susan was suspended from her counseling job, then dismissed after the case became public. Michael's hardware store lost customers. Legal bills grew, eventually. He sold it. I did not celebrate any of that. There were no champagne glasses, no victory dinner, just consequences arriving one envelope at a time. My own recovery was slower than people imagine. I spent months disputing bills and payments. Some accounts were frozen quickly. Others required repeated statements, identity reports, and calls where I had to tell the same humiliating story to a stranger. The forged transfer was finally voided, and the bungalow returned to my name. My credit climbed back above 800, but I could not walk through that house without seeing Nolan at the door, wearing my future like it belonged to him. So I sold it. The profit helped me buy a quiet home on the other side of Grand Rapids. It had wide windows, pale wood floors, and a small backyard where morning light reached the kitchen table. I started therapy with Rachel, who taught me that being alone and being abandoned were not the same thing. At my housewarming, Claire handed me a small ceramic dish for my keys. I laughed when I opened it. Later, I stood by the front door holding the new spare key. For a moment, my hand would not move. Then I gave it to Claire. Not because she was related to me, because she had earned my trust. That night, I understood I had not lost a family. I had stopped calling betrayal by that name. Love is not access. Family is not permission. And forgiveness does not mean carrying consequences that belong to someone else. I did not destroy my family. I stopped protecting them from the truth. So if someone keeps using the word family to excuse betrayal, remember this: you are allowed to set a boundary without becoming cruel. Have you ever had to protect yourself from someone who should have protected you? Share your story in the comments. Send this video to someone who needs it, and subscribe so you do not miss the next story.